pedido pela organização do evento. Esse é um simpósio, então, satélite da Pfizer, e o título desse simpósio é Avanços na Depressão e no Diagnóstico da Depressão no Ciclo Vital. Antes de cada um de nós falarmos, contar um pouco da história desse simpósio. Ele é um simpósio absolutamente ético, conceitual, é na realidade um simpósio de educação continuada que a direção clínica da Pfizer organizou muito bem. A gente espera que de fato vocês possam aproveitar o espírito científico desse evento da Pfizer. Então nós vamos começar primeiro pelo Dr. May Steiner, que é um professor da Universidade de McMaster University de Toronto. Ele é professor de psiquiatria e de neurociências comportamentais e também de ginecologia e obstetrícia. E também é professor do departamento de psiquiatria de St. Joseph's Healthcare, também em Hamilton, que é uma cidade do lado de Toronto. É um grande privilégio nós termos o professor Steiner aqui. Quem costuma ler sobre psiquiatria da mulher certamente já deve ter lido muitos artigos e livros do professor Steiner, que trabalha basicamente então com a psiquiatria da mulher e também algumas coisas de criança. Então é uma grande honra chamarmos o professor Steiner a falar para nós.
Thank you, Flavio. I have no idea what you said about me, but that's okay. I'm sure it was only good things. I'd like to thank the organizers and the special Pfizer satellite for inviting me. Okay. Can you hear me now? For inviting me to this beautiful place. And I will try in the next little while to show you a little bit of what we are doing in our clinic. Just to impress upon you, we have a unique clinic in Canada which looks after women only, women with mental health related to reproductive cyclicity, which means that we see women with PMS, PMDD, we see women with mood, anxiety, and stress during pregnancy and postpartum, and we see women during the perimenopause and beyond. We see approximately 800 new women with these diagnostic categories every year. Today, I'd like to focus on one subgroup of that population that we focused on, and that is the perinatal group. That's the group during pregnancy and postpartum. And I will talk about these women and also some outcomes of their children. This is the transgenerational effect that we are studying, and I hope that at the end I can show you that there are some ways of preventing these disorders. And just to give you my financial disclosure, and as they say in English, I taketh from whomever giveth, so I don't have any conflict. So just
Close the microphone.
Oh.
Thank you very
They
much.
want me to swallow the microphone. Just as an introduction, perinatal psychiatric disorders are a leading cause of maternal morbidity and mortality. Parental mental illness may pose the first adverse life event for a child, and I think that's very important to remember that we are always dealing with a dyad. We are dealing with a mother and a baby. And we also know that depression transmits across the generations. And to put that in perspective, not only is depression the most common health disorder in women, But those of you who believe that just get pregnant and everything will be fine are totally mistaken. That's a grandma's myth. The idea is that we now see approximately 10 to 20% of pregnant women have some of these depressive, anxious, stressful disorders. And just to mention that during the postpartum period, the prevalence is even higher, and we also know that it is a recurrent disorder. So why is it that worldwide, I just told you that the prevalence is higher than 10%, why is it that worldwide the diagnosis is only made in 0.8% of childbearing women? And if it is diagnosed, many of them will receive inadequate treatment, and many of them will be non-compliant. And we know that that will cause substantial maternal and infant morbidity. What happens if we don't treat depression during pregnancy? Well, to begin with, if we don't treat the mother during pregnancy, it is almost guaranteed that it will continue into a postpartum depression. And I don't want to belabor the whole list here, okay? But I would like to focus on one thing, and that is the negative effect on bonding. Bonding does not start when a baby is born. Bonding usually starts around 12 to 16 weeks of pregnancy when the mother starts to feel the baby. We see women who are extremely depressed, anxious, and stressed who have not bonded with the unborn child at all. And usually that is a very bad sign in terms of prognosis. What happens if you don't treat the mother during pregnancy? What will happen with that baby before it's born and after it's born? There is now a whole long list of outcomes of controlled clinical trials that show that the effects of untreated prenatal stress and depression will have dire consequences. There is more miscarriages, there is more preterm deliveries, there is more admissions to the neonatal intensive care units. These babies are small for gestational age. They have smaller head circumference, which is not a good idea at all. They have lower APGAR scores, more congenital anomalies, more neurodevelopmental delays, and last but not least, long-term, up to their teens and 20s, cognitive, psychosocial, and behavioral problems. Now, I mentioned that we know that being depressed during pregnancy is not good, but probably you have seen this probably most convincing study out of Harvard that has looked at relapse of major depressive disorders during pregnancy. And that study looked at more than 200 women who had recurrent episodes of depression. And the idea was to look what happens if these women stop their medications. And here are the two groups that actually stopped their medications. And you see that almost 70% of those women had episodes during the entire pregnancy. Whereas women who stayed on their medication, only 26% of those had episodes. Again, to suggest that pregnancy by itself is not protecting against an episode. When I will start telling you a little bit of the data that we collected, okay, I just want to mention that the background to our studies is really the notion that maternal pre- and perinatal risk factors for acute and long-term psychoneurodevelopmental consequences in the offspring has been shown time and again in rodents, in primates, and more recently in humans. And last but not least, we are all interested now in the environmental programming of gene activity, the whole formula of E by G. Until now, this has only been shown in rodents. I'm assuming that some of you are familiar with the model of licking and grooming that Michael Meany has proposed. And maybe during the question period I can tell you a little bit more about it. But it's a long and very interesting story to show that you can actually affect what will happen genetically with an epigenetic intervention for the second generation. So this is the study that I will talk about. It's called Maternal Adversity, Vulnerability, and Neurodevelopment, also known as the MAVEN study. And we're looking at a population prenatally. We're looking at maternal adversity during the pregnancy. We're looking at maternal depression, anxiety, and stress. We're looking at smoking and alcohol intake and their nutrition. We're looking at environmental factors. We're looking at the maternal endocrine state and the fetal growth and the neural development. And then we look at the adaptations and the vulnerability in the offspring. We also look at that population prospectively during the postnatal period, again looking at postpartum maternal adversity, looking at the same factors. The outcomes that we're looking at currently are the hypothalamic pituitary axis and the autonomic nervous system, in addition to a lot of psychological neurodevelopmental milestones for which I will really not have much time to talk. The overall objective of that study was to recruit 150 pregnant women with adversity, defined as anxious, depressed, and stressed. And by the way, we stayed away from diagnostic categories because we did not think that that was very meaningful, especially that many of us actually do not pray to the Bible, which is called DSM-4. Sorry. And we also followed 100 pregnant controls during the from the second trimester and on. We then followed up the mothers and the babies prospectively, and right now we are actually in year 6 and 7 of those babies. So we already have children in the clinic that are 6 and 7 years old. We assess physiological, psychological, environmental, and genetic mediators, and we also assess neurodevelopmental milestones. Before we started, we actually looked at the literature, and we already have identified the stress during pregnancy, especially the levels of high cortisol that those women experience, can suppress the growth hormone system, can increase NMDA activity, which can, in animals at least, cause cell death in the hippocampus. It lowers the threshold for stress reactions of the sympathetic nervous system, for which I will show you some data. And it also decreases the efficacy of the immune system in these children. And we have an ongoing study actually looking at those children and the higher prevalence of asthma in that population. We also know from a very nice, elegant study that was published a year ago that placental CRH, which is definitely a reflection of the very high level of stress and high cortisol in the mother, has been associated with higher postpartum depression in a small population. This has been collected from cord blood at the time when the babies were born. Unfortunately, I have to tell you that 2 weeks ago, a poster was presented in New Orleans, which actually looked at a much larger population of 1,230 women, okay? And this was not replicated. But the difference is that in this case, they did not collect cord blood. They collected mid-pregnancy CRH plasma levels, and that did not correlate with the postpartum Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale. So maybe the direct measure of cord blood is a more accurate of the reflection, but we have to bear in mind that this is probably not the whole story. The other thing to remember is that we know that there is an early programming of the HPA axis. This is a study by Steve Matthews from Toronto done in guinea pigs. And again, they were looking at modifications of behavior, cognition, memory, learning, and emotion. And glucocorticoids exposure has effects on the cardiovascular system, the immune system, and glucose regulation, which brings back to mind that actually metabolic syndrome does not start at age 40. It actually starts in utero. And Wadhwa, who has for the longest time looked at maternal CRH, has already been establishing long time ago that the higher CRH level can cause actually preterm deliveries. and all the consequences of preterm deliveries. So we were looking at stress.